Now, Malik Nabers' situation this season has not been as explosive as maybe some of us thought it would be. I had him as a top 10 player in the class. I love Malik Nabers. I think he can still be a fantastic receiver in the NFL. He finishes the game with 9 targets, 6 catches, and 64 yards. But, John, all of that came in the second half. First half of this game, 0 targets, 0 catches. What'd you think about Malik Nabers' day? And then afterwards, he gets asked about it. He's like, hey, slow start to the game. Malik Nabers is basically like, look, you got to talk to the coaches. I gotta get the ball more. I gotta get involved more. And then Brian Daboll, the day after, they asked him about that, and Brian Daboll said the same thing. Brian Daboll was like, hey, you know what? It's my job to get my stars the ball more, and we did not do a good enough job getting Malik Nabers the ball. So regular stats look fine, but all of that came in the second half. It was not spread out as much as it needs to be. And to be fair, the Giants didn't have the ball as much. They weren't really in a lot of passing situations during the first half of that game. They were getting absolutely dominated. But your thoughts on Malik Nabers overall, some of those frustrations that he has vocalized, and then the tape this past week against the New York Giants?
Yeah, I mean, he's just speaking out of emotion. I think like Malik Nabers is one of the league leaders in targets this season, or at least he was going into this week. I mean, he still is probably after the second half of this game. The Giants have literally at times overworked him. It's so funny how the criticisms go with this situation, because I remember the game, which was the game he got knocked out at the end of the game, like the drop along the sideline that he had. But it was one where he got hit. I forget which game it was, but he ended up like on the chalk, like he was like out, I think, and then they walked him off and he missed the next game, I think. He's missed 1 or 2 games this season, and he's still amongst the league leaders in targets this season. Like, they have force-fed him the ball to a point where people were literally tweeting and wondering, is he going to get overworked this season as a rookie? Now, one half, and they don't get him the ball with a third-string quarterback, and people are questioning like whether he gets the ball enough. And he is a part of this, obviously, because he says, there's already 30-0. It was 23-0, and then he got like 4 targets on the next drive. But on the first drive of the third quarter, they had 10 dropbacks. They had 18 offensive plays in the first half. They had 10 dropbacks. Tommy DeVito got sacked on 4 of them. So yeah, they hardly had any plays that functioned. Their offensive line was complete disaster in the first half. They couldn't protect DeVito at all. And then DeVito didn't pull the trigger when he did have opportunities to throw the football. He was panicking. That's why Malik Nabers didn't get the ball in the first half. Like, Brian Daboll has force-fed this man targets. He has literally said, I don't care if you're a rookie, we're going to build the entire plan out of you all season. And so I find it a little bit rich that I know that everybody's just always looking for ways to criticize Daboll, and I do feel like sometimes I am his only defender left on the planet. And I don't think he's done everything perfectly at all. I think there's things he absolutely should have done better, and I think he's probably right. And I think I seriously question whether he has some of the soft skills needed to do this job, this particular job, head coach, especially of the New York Football Giants, at the level that he needs to. I think it's very fair to question whether he's the right man to turn around, obviously, a disaster organization. It's been a disaster since well before he got there, and it seems like it's going to be a disaster for a little while longer until they figure out some of the most key positions on the team. But yeah, I think that you're in for a pretty rough ride if you're Malik Nabers and you're upset about one half, because he has gotten all you can eat. He has been very good this season. I think he's also looked at times completely exhausted late in games. He's had a lot of late game drops, probably because some of that fatigue this season, and he had one in this game as well. And so I think he can be better. I also think the fact that the offense is what it is at this point in time, man. The offensive line, unwatchable performance from both tackles in this game, like 2 guys that literally just can't compete. Chris Hubbard's just done. The Luminor gets hurt 4 snaps into the game. Evan Neal just looks atrocious. DeVito has no chance, even if he were a good quarterback, and I don't think we have any evidence that he is, even though he played okay in the second half of this game. So yeah, it's just a lot of things for the Giants, and I think it's very unrealistic for him to expect that, even though I know it's human nature to have want to contributed before your team goes down. The reality is this team's just done, and that's unfortunate for him in his production, because he's not going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, even though he's talented enough to do so, and he may still have a good game or two before the end of the season, but this is looking like a team that'll draft in the top 5, maybe top 3.
This is the part that worries me the most about Daboll, because I do think that he's a good football coach. I think he's a great football mind, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And so I would like for the Giants to keep him as head coach. But the issue now becomes, this is a Giants team that's very frustrated very clearly. You have somebody like Malik Nabers who's like, you got to give me the ball more. And like you said, there's numbers to say they've gotten him the ball plenty so far this season. But then you look on tape and there's guys who are not really giving 100% effort. You can kind of see that. They could be playing a little bit harder. They could play more with more urgency. They could play with more focus, and they're just not. It's a defensive thing. It's an offensive thing. Everything is there. You talked about some of the issues on the trenches, but also the defensive side of the football as well. Like Deonte Banks has been criticized for lack of effort throughout this season. The clip that was going around of Bobby Okereke basically just doing his cardio out there, just getting some running in, not really interested in actually making the tackle on a play. And, I'm not trying to do that to like take shots at people, but it's hard to get really invested to go suit up to play a game with all you got. And when the situation for the Giants sort of is what it is. And that's what really worries me about Daboll is it feels like he's losing the locker room, at least when it comes to a motivational standpoint. You've got, 6 weeks left of this?
No.
It can get uglier for sure. And if it does, can you, even if you have all the right excuses, even if you have Daniel Jones is out and we're going to get our quarterback in there and we're going to, kickstart things. We're coming off of a really good draft class with Nabers and Newman and Drew Phillips and everybody. We're going in the right direction when it comes to roster building. Can you bring back a head coach that loses the locker room like this? Can you really bring him back the next year? And the players that are still here on the team, can they really look at Daboll and be like, yeah, all right, man, sure. We'll get up for this season. I don't know. You might need to clean house at this point. And Mara might be wanting to clean house at Joe Shane simply because of what Saquon Barkley is doing for the rival Philadelphia Eagles. That might be the one move over anything else where he goes okay, well, I'm sick and tired of this. I hate this. I'm moving on. And it's not getting easier to think that this Giants regime is going to be back next year. And I thought that this week was the most damning. And to be honest with you, I have less faith now than I ever have that Daboll and Shane are going to be back next year because of how these guys are playing when they go out there and how unmotivated some of them look. And that's tough to overcome. It really is.
It definitely is. Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of questions there for sure with them. And just to wrap up the Nabers point, I think just if we're just zeroing in on him, there is a key area, Trevor, in which he can be better this season. And it was disappointing in this game against the Bucs, to be honest with you, when you watch his performance. The biggest thing for me that has been disappointing with Nabers, and I think he has been across the board good. Contested catches, ability to get open. He is incredibly hard to cover. I think he's going to be an unbelievable pro. I really think he'd be a top 10 receiver in the league. All those things are true. If we're just looking at him right now this season and we're saying why isn't his production even better than it is, which has been great. He's going to probably have 1,000 yards. I think there's, we are nitpicking here for sure. But if we're wondering about that part of it, to me, it's that they have force-fed him targets. His average depth of target has not been some crazy thing this season where he's only getting all these deep balls and nothing else. They have given him lots of opportunities in the short areas of the field to get the ball in space and make people miss. They have run him a ton on shallow crosses and getting the leverage off the snap on defensive backs and getting able to catch the ball on the move. He's not been able to make people miss in space. He has not been a creator after the catch, and that is, I think, one of the bigger disappointments. If you're just saying, why isn't his production better? They've given him lots of opportunities to create for himself, and he hasn't done it. He has 2 forced missed tackles over the past 5 weeks of play for him. He only has 6 total on the season. He is averaging yards after the catch per reception this season, 3.2 yards after the catch per reception. Do you want to guess where that ranks out of the 42 qualifying wide receivers?
40.
It's not quite that low. 34th.
He's
tied with Keenan Allen. He's tied with Keenan Allen. I mean, and especially we're not talking about a small sample size. Remember, this guy has plenty of targets on the season. He has gotten lots of opportunities. And so that part of it not being what it should be, I think he is 3rd in the NFL amongst all wide receivers in targets this year. And yet there have not been the opportunities to create after the catch. He had the ball in space a couple times, could not make people miss in this game, did not break force any missed tackles or pick up much after the catch in this game. And so that, to me, if you're just looking at his game, I would have thought he would have been way more dynamic in that way. And if he wants that type of production, he needs to be able to create for himself in some of the situations that they're designing for him. So that's the area of his game I'd look at a lot over the next couple of weeks to see if it improves or not.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below. So if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.